I'll start with Leslie in about 2 minutes. Okay. So we're streaming already, I'm just waiting for it. So I will go in and then you go in. Thanks. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I trust you can see me. Thank you for joining D-Flat Studios this morning. We are delighted to have with us a very special guest, a friend of the studio. And this morning we had a very interesting morning. I mean, given the whole COVID situation, making the best of this year. In place of our annual recital, we managed to invite Leslie Tan, a founding member of the Tang Quartet, to come and conduct a masterclass with 5 of our students this morning. Leslie is a founding member of the Tang Quartet and cellist of Red Dot Baroque, and he has performed to critical acclaim in major venues and festivals worldwide. So we're very, very glad to have him with us this morning. And we had a wonderful masterclass starting at 8:30. We had 5 students play 3 pieces. And it was a really engaging morning, and I think the kids had a great time learning from Leslie. And it's also very interesting that a cellist, pedagogue, and educator is teaching a pianist, and there's so much to learn between both instruments. So welcome, Leslie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Thanks for the invite. It was very interesting when you first invited me. I was like, oh, should I be doing this? I'm a cellist, and I, have to teach pianists how to play. But I realized that it's not teaching pianists how to play, but how to play the piano. But it's about chamber music. So, and we did four hands this morning. So it was very interesting to get the. I've never instructed pianists on how to. Well, yeah, I've instructed pianists at the conservatory level in chamber works like string trio, piano trios, piano quartets, but never four hands. And that's, I guess, it's the same thing, but getting them to voice properly and getting them to know how to cue each other, which I think it's a bit more alien for pianists. I think to breathe together, that sort of thing. I think the kids, they're not used to it.
Absolutely. Just to provide some context for those joining us, I think the genesis of this whole thing was that, when we sat down and just had a chat, we spoke about how piano tends to be a very solo instrument, right? And I mean, we have many, many piano students in Singapore and all over the world. I mean, it's still, probably the most widely taught music instrument, the piano. And it tends to be very solo, like in your own silo. You just learn the classical music, whatever page in front of you, but you fail to engage with other musicians, which as a string player, you do have that opportunity too, right? Because if you play the violin, you play in an ensemble, you play in a quartet, and that's quite lacking in piano, which is why we talked about the importance of ensemble playing, right? What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. I think in general, even for string instruments, there's this because we are constantly preparing the kids, or a lot of the students are preparing themselves for exams and all that. So they tend to sort of lock themselves in a situation where they have to only prepare solo pieces. Even for string instrumentalists, I know a lot of them, string students don't venture beyond unless the school says, okay, in a month, after every 3 lessons, you get one chamber class, that sort of thing. Some schools do that, but a lot of schools don't do that. So they get stuck. And then a lot of string students also don't think of joining an orchestra and all that. So that is that problem. But it's even worse, I think, for pianists, because I mean, how many pianists do you need in an orchestra, for example, right? So that is a problem. But I would say to the pianist that, right, today is an example where you can always do four hands, which is very interesting already. Or you can always grab a friend from the same music studio or from different music studios and say, hey, let me just play piano for the piece that you're learning, say violin sonata. Let me play a violin sonata for you, right? And let me be the accompanying part. And I don't think they should think of it as accompaniment, but they should think of it as collaboration. So it's collaborative piano rather than being an accompanist. And instead, actually, it's a very good thing that pianists should be encouraged, piano students should be encouraged to do, to accompany and collaborate with their peers, even for exams. So that instead of the string students having to look for a professional accompanist, they work with their peers, fellow students in the same studio or different studios, and they develop a rapport from there. And I think it's very, very crucial they start young to learn how to work with each other, even in a solo sort of situation.
Yes, absolutely. So, because of that genesis, the topic that we're going to talk about today is the importance of chamber and ensemble music. All right. So let me kick off this fireside chat with why is playing in an ensemble important?
Well, simply because music is a shared experience.
Absolutely.
Music is not something that, I mean, you can do it on your own, but eventually you need to perform. You probably want to perform it for someone, even if it's just family members. So that in itself is already a shared experience. And in order to get everyone to enjoy you, you need to be aware of the surroundings. And for me, that is the genesis of chamber music, to be aware of people around you, whether they are participants actively or passively. Active participants meaning a collaborator, or a passive one would be an audience member. You don't want just to bang away at the piano or scribble away on the violin without any regard for the people in the room. And I think chamber music promotes that. And that actually, that awareness of your environment and the people around you, your neighbors and your collaborators, that really extends not just to music, but extends to every aspect of life. So I always think chamber music is a very good reflection of what we deal with in daily life. Because if you can work with people around you in music, you definitely can work in different environments with in different fields, you know, with people around you, and how to relate to people. That's very crucial. That's, for me, chamber music teaches you about life.
If I were just to parallel that to your wide and very rich performing experience, how do you as a performer, or rather, can you share some stories of how you had to change, perhaps, be it the order of the music or the interpretation of the music based on what the audience is giving back to you at that point? Like being this reactive experience that you talk about, being aware of what's happening around you.
Okay, so one thing that I had to learn fairly early in my performing career was that when we started doing school concerts, you realize that you cannot perform, for example, really serious long works for a teenage crowd, right? You have to break those pieces down. Bite sizes, or maybe just half a movement, just the exposition, things like that. You can do those serious works, but you need to break it down, just the essence of it, and explain. You need to do a lot of talks. But not only that, even within the school system, in schools we have a special program catered for the schools, short pieces, what we call encore pieces, lollipops, you know, the pieces that you just hand out and people listen to them for 2 minutes and they're very happy, and they go away enjoying themselves, but also learning something from that 2-minute experience, 2 minutes each time, right? But even within that, the environment of a school, of the environment of the school system, we have to be very careful. Are we dealing with primary school kids? And then even within the primary school kids, you know, there's a difference playing for a 6-7-year-old audience and a 12-13-year-old audience. And then in the secondary school, the early secondary school, 13, 14, they're still okay. When you get to 16, they're too cool for this classical music stuff, you know, and then you have to find a way to engage them. And then we actually use the very same program and we bring it to pre-U classes as well, junior colleges. Now then you treat it very differently. The language that you use, it's not only the way we play, but the language that we use when we talk to the students. It's a very different language. And so that already, I think all musicians should be made to go, all professional musicians or all students, right, serious students should be made to go through outreach concerts, because it teaches you how to relate to audiences. And of course, then professionally, the idea of playing in a concert hall, so how big is your concert hall? 1,002 seater, 1,006, or you playing in a much smaller intimate space, or you playing in a club, or you play in a church where only 5, I've done concerts where only 5 people come in from the parish. You still have to put up a very good show. Just because 5 people turn up doesn't mean that you can just disregard them, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think the respect, even if it's just one audience member,
correct.
You have to show them that they turned up and
correct. But for that one person, I like the idea of even playing for one person.
Tell me more.
Because there is that intensity that if I was to perform with you seated, let's say even 2 meters away from me, right, with this COVID situation, right, I was thinking of maybe putting up concert, and you hear it here first, all right, an idea that I would play solo pieces, Bach perhaps, but no more than 5 minutes. I'll play a 5-minute Bach piece for you, and you're seated 2 meters across the room from me, and I play that 5 minutes, and I have that intense eye contact. You have that 5 minutes with me. or with any soloist of your choice in the roster, for example. You choose the piece, the soloist, 5 minutes, and then you have a chat with the soloist for another 5 minutes, and 10 minutes is all you get. And that's it. And it's an experience, the intimacy of that, how I react, how the performer reacts to that one person. If it's a older person, if it's a younger person, if it's a kid, you know, it doesn't matter. But I bet you there will be the experiences will be very, very different. And that intimacy and the intensity. And of course, sometimes you will feel a different attraction to the person seated opposite you as well. So that sort of things, all these things play into how a performer will react as well. And that's I was thinking of that, and it can make sense because and I was hoping that this can become a new normal, you know, that we can add it on to the concert calendar when we all have the vaccine and everything, when we see the end of COVID, but that sort of thing, I can invite people into my boudoir, my room, my studio, and you get that one-on-one just there, 10 minutes, that's it. And I think it's an interesting experience.
Well, firstly, I'll make 3 observations. I think the first is, I'll take you up on that because I think it is a very personal experience. And coming back to what we're talking about chamber and ensemble, about this connecting with, be it fellow musicians or even as an audience with the performer, I think that's, you know, I think we're alluding to the same idea that even as an audience member listening to someone play, there's a certain connection. Right?
That's right.
And I mean, much has been said among very accomplished musicians about how after a while, even when people are just listening to each other, we start to breathe at the same tempo. Our hearts start to beat at the same tempo, and music sort of is that common language that binds us all together. All right, so that's the first. The second is sometimes, you know, even listening, I mean, you're a cellist, and obviously we all know Yo-Yo Ma. And sometimes, you know, just listening to him play his Bach, the G major, right? And it's immediately, you know, even in the comfort of your own space, through a recording that is, you know, been done at a different time, you still feel that kind of connection.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
I think, and that's very crucial. But also for me, not only the audience. Okay, so this reaction to the audience, right, and the audience reacting to the music. I think that was the whole premise of John Cage, John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 minutes of silence. I think that the idea that the audience, the performer sits there and does nothing, and you sense the uneasiness of the audience, thinking, what's happening? You know, should we move? Should we just keep quiet in silence, or are we allowed to cough because he's obviously doing nothing, and that sort of thing. So I think that was the whole premise of it, one of the premises of it. But for me, even in a space, you say you mentioned listening to a recording, right, of Yo-Yo Ma. But I'll extend this idea further. So if I use that, if I play it in this small room that I'm in now, I play it at different tempo and different intensity. If I play it in the church, I give it a lot more space and I take it much slower. The space matters as well. Not only the audience, not only living people, but space. For me, space is a living thing. Architecture plays into music a lot because architecture and music, we deal with space and time, right?
Let's come back. So it is often said that art and music mimics life. You know, you were talking about how important it is. What are some of the lessons from playing in ensemble can we apply to life?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
It is often said that art and music mimic life. Right? What are some of the lessons from playing in an ensemble? What are some of the lessons that we can apply to life?
Well, when you play with other people, when you have collaborators, you don't expect everyone to agree with you.
Yes.
You cannot. That's life, right? You try to persuade others, come around to your ideas. And that's the other thing that you have to learn. I think relationships. I think with certain collaborators, you can be stronger. And some people you play with who may be quite clueless or not clueless. I don't mean it in a bad way, but sometimes I like playing with students and they have no idea sometimes. Then you are more forceful, or you're more bold with your ideas and say, you try this, you try that.
Yeah.
But with your peers, you tend to be, okay, let's maybe we you know, what do you think? And after years of being in this business, you realize that there's really not such a thing as a bad idea. Every idea is good. Perhaps some ideas are ugly and some are not. But again, ugliness and beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. It's all very relative. So, but you have to expect disagreement. And I think we need disagreement because friction creates. Friction always creates. It may not be pleasant, but friction creates. So I think
there is tension in creation, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cultures, in some cultures, so certain cultures, perhaps the Asian cultures, I think we may be not. I'm being very general. I'm generalizing here, and I'm stereotyping. But in Asian cultures, because we tend to be more polite, we work around each other's ideas. So there's a lot of compromises, or we keep more quiet and we just do, oh, okay, yeah. I think that might not be as effective. But I think in the Western cultures where there's more, general acceptance of discourse and being able to disagree, I think that brings out better results, because you are. It's good to have strong ideas and then to see whether these strong ideas work. It's like making a building. If you're an architect, you want to put a lot of accents on in a building. You want to make your building outstanding. But how do these different parts of the building react to each other? Does it make sense to put a column here? You know, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but sometimes it makes sense to have 10 columns, and things like that. So I think all these things we need to, it helps, I think, when people are more daring and are not afraid of conflict. I think the fear of conflict sometimes make you not want to discuss and just keep quiet and just politely say, okay, I'll follow your way. Sometimes following a way may not necessarily be the best thing, maybe because that way is probably the most boring way or the most bland way. We need to talk about these things. I think that's very crucial. So I think certain cultures work better, I think, in chamber music or in
on that thread. Where is your position on that trade of having a very strong, I mean, traditionally all the great orchestras of the world always had one great leader at that time, right? But in your suggestion of being this chamber smaller sort of setting, where is the trade-off of you must have one very strong leader versus everybody have strong voices, but we come to a consensus at the end? If I may just take that back to a simpler term, for example, in a four-hand issue like we just did this morning, right? If one of the pieces, somebody say, okay, here, maybe the allegando, for example, should be a lot slower, a lot broader. Mestoso should be a lot more majestic. Or let's build with some reference relative, we start small and then grow big. We talked about that. Where is that trade-off of who one strong man or having two strong people trying to work it out?
It's a very difficult one to answer, because I think every group, every combination will work better with certain philosophies. I always feel that it's very important to have, if the line, for example, always lies with the first violin, then I think it's very crucial to have one strong person to dictate, and this is what I want. But that person must be aware of the harmonies as well. So this strong man must be aware of what's happening around him, because a melody is dictated by the harmony, what's lying underneath it. You cannot just play a tune because you feel, this needs to be a happy tune. But actually, if you listen to the harmonies, maybe this tune might be not happy. It's just, there's a lot of sarcasm in it. It's different from happy, right? So you must be a very knowledgeable, strong man. It's very important. If you have someone like Donald Trump, then that doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? But it's all, music is politics. Working in a group is politics. So if you have someone who knew what they wanted, like Lee Kuan Yew, but even then they had the old guard of very different, equally strong ideas, and but one person being the representing face, but the rest of them were equally strong. So your strength in what? So one strong person, but the other people have strength in other things. So you need to recognize, this person has a strength in, he has a good ear for tone color. So let's defer to him with, I have a strong idea of articulations and interpretation. That let's defer to, that sort of thing. You need to know each other's strengths. And I think that works. Anything that is totally dictatorial does not work. A good authority, a good person in authority needs to recognize the weakness and the strengths of the group.
Yes. I actually do really like what you say about music being very political. I mean, to put it so crudely, it's also it's an organization, right? And in all organizations, there are dynamics between personnel. So in the case of an orchestra, musicians. And I think let's not forget that musicians generally, again, are fairly opinionated, and they do form a point of view on certain issues which they like to stick with. So getting everybody to have that buy-in, to have that that unity of idea it is difficult, and likewise in any organization. And I say this and I preface this because this story was told to me by a fairly senior member of a pharmaceutical company, and they had the opportunity of visiting Sir Simon Rattle with the Berlin Philharmonic in a leadership training. I was like, oh, that's very interesting that your HR will organize your C-suite to go and meet with an orchestra. What is the connection? You think like pharma and music, what's the connection? And actually, if you look at it, OBH, organizational behavior, human resource, it's all about galvanizing 120 strong orchestra.
Correct.
To do that.
So there's, I mean, even back in the 80s already, a lot of groups, a lot of music groups have been used as whether you are a conductorless group or not a conductorless group, right? A lot of these these orchestras, these ensembles have been used as management models. And we've always done, and we have done in the quartet, have done some of these management forums before. You go in and tell people how it is to manage something without a conductor. It depends. You just, yeah. So a lot of this is quite common. I know a lot of groups with conductors are used as well. And the conductor will tell you half the time that he's just standing there and he's waving and he tries to organize things, but he's not the one dictating, because you need strong people in your organization from the ground up, never from the top down, because top down doesn't work. So the ground up, you have strong lieutenants to help you, then you are just a figurehead, and you try to organize the thoughts. But you see, with the same thing with organizations, with companies, with orchestras, with ensembles. I have worked in different ensembles and ensembles of different working styles, and I am a very opinionated person. I have very, very strong ideas, but I've worked in a group where I just keep quiet and I'm happily listening to the leader, much younger person, just listening and just absorbing and saying, wow, this is the way I want to. This is perfect. But then I've also worked in groups where the leader is very strong, but you sit there and you think, I think I'm wasting my time here. So I think there's no one right fit. Yeah. It depends on your character, and it depends on the matching organization, and you just match yourself. It's just matching, really. It's like finding a job. It's finding a job.
Okay. Okay. Tell me more about Project Attitude, this platform that you founded.
Well, Project Attitude was founded because we had to do something for the Singapore International Foundation asked me to get a group together to go to Indonesia to work with Afghan refugees. And so I decided, okay, let's just start this whole organizing, let's formalize the whole thing. And so I decided to register as a company, and it went very well. And after that, we helped out. We did a project with the Singapore Singapore Special Voices, working with kids with autism and their carers. And we wanted to go on doing more of these things. Unfortunately, that was just a year before COVID hit us. And so everything's on hold, but this is what we intend to do. We want to use music to work with, not just music, sorry, art, any form of art, to work with people who are not privileged enough, can be underprivileged. You don't have to have disabilities, right? So, but I think if you're underprivileged, I think that's a disability already. I think being a refugee, that's a disability. That's actually, being a refugee is a far more horrible disability than being someone who has no sight, I think. It's very difficult. I don't want to be quoted on, I know I'll be quoted on, oh, you're favoring this and that, but refugees have no status, basically, a lot of them. They cannot go to schools, they cannot work, and so they have nothing. They form their own organizations, and so we went there to help. We spent a week with them, using music with my team and getting them to tell their stories. And we wanted to go back then and record more of their stories, and we've played the music and we worked with them and maybe write a book or make a CD so that the proceeds can go back to their organization to help them make better lives for themselves. So Project Attitude is about projecting an attitude, an attitude, using art, an attitude to help people have better lives.
Wonderful. For donors who identify with your cause, how may they assist, be it through donations or in kind?
Yes, we look for, I've got a website, projectattitude.com, and we are looking for volunteers, but we're also looking for people with great ideas. And for any donations, just write us. We've got the website. Go ahead and look at our website. And I've also, because through Project Attitude, I started something in Bali, the Bark in Bali Festival. And again, we did it that 1 year last year. And then COVID hit us. We were supposed to carry on this year. We went and looked for sponsors and we got more people to get interested. And then again, COVID. So the Bark in Bali is a music festival. We get professional musicians to come from all over the world. We started with 3 or 4 international musicians. And this year we were supposed to get more. And the musicians would perform on the island of Bali, but also teach chamber music. I'm quite tired of, and I went through it. We had to go overseas for summer. We had to go to America or to Europe, and a lot of people do that, and it's a lot of money. Of course, there are now more of these festivals in, say, Korea, Japan, and China, but they're fairly costly as well. Your average student from Indonesia, from Thailand, from Singapore, from Malaysia, perhaps, won't be able to afford it. So I thought Bali would be a great place. If I can get enough sponsors, the idea would be to get paying students, because I think Bali is attractive enough for people who are rich enough, who can afford it, to pay for these lessons from international artists, international renowned teachers. But then the payment, I would use those fees to support poorer students, especially from Indonesia. You have a lot of creative people in Indonesia and Thailand who just cannot afford to spend millions of baht or whatever just to go to Europe and do that. There are a lot of unfortunate people. I realize that. Singapore, we don't realize how fortunate we are. And so that, for me, is a huge thing back in Bali. And I hope that this COVID will be over very soon. And I want to start that again. And we have a lot of foreigners also in Bali who are expatriates, who are very interested in promoting it, because they see what's happening on the island. And the whole island is so dependent on tourism. Right now, nothing is happening. Can you imagine? It's a whole island, entire island's livelihood wiped out because of COVID. At least here in Singapore, we have other things going on. Bali is just tourism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I may just circle back to what we spoke about, creation comes from you. We talked about this tension and friction. So let's hope something comes out of that.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yes. All right. At this time, I'd like to invite Eliza into this chat. Eliza had the pleasure of enjoying the masterclass with Leslie this morning. Eliza is 12. She completed her PSLE earlier, and congratulations in order. And we want to thank Eliza for playing three pieces this morning. The jazz arrangement of
I'd like to invite Eliza into this chat. Eliza had the pleasure of
switch off your
joining Masterclass with
so
Leslie this morning.
Not,
Eliza is 12. She completed the PSLE earlier, and
all right, and Eliza also played Young Person's Guide to Orchestra by Benjamin Britten. And the last piece was the Montagues and Capulets, Prokofiev from his Romeo and Juliet. Eliza, I'd like to start by asking you a question. How did you enjoy working with Leslie and playing the duet with Jordan and Sean this morning?
I quite enjoyed playing the duet, but
Eliza, would you like to remove your mask?
Remove the mask. It's okay.
Thank you.
So at first I found it a bit strange working with my duet partner because I hadn't played an actual duet before in front of an audience. And today while playing the song I also found it a bit strange and new because I never had an actual masterclass with people actually watching the class.
But it's like a performance, isn't it? I think a masterclass is partly like a performance with a teacher. And basically, I don't think I said anything too different than what you've been taught already. So basically, I think masterclasses are like always, you get a stranger come in and reinforce the ideas that your teacher has been telling you for some time already. And as a teacher, I send my students for masterclass and they go through the same process. They're a bit nervous because there's this, someone who's quite famous telling them what to do, but essentially that person is telling almost the same things as what I have been telling my students. So I think it's a very effective way of learning. And then maybe I might have given you some new ideas, I don't know, but it's always good to hear a slightly different opinion. You realize with master classes that there's not one way of playing music. There's so many different ways of expressing yourself.
Eliza, would you like to pose a question to Leslie?
Leslie, can you please share some of your collaborative experiences with the Tang Quartet?
Okay, so I mean the quartet has been in existence for quarter of a century, close to 30 years already, and through the time we've worked with actually a lot of different soloists. Sometimes we spend time with four of us, we rehearse every day, and so we know each other very well musically, right? And otherwise. But when you go to a festival, we work with pianists and we invite people to come, and you don't have the luxury of working with an extra pianist, or let's say with a cello quintet, you have one more cellist come in, or with a piano quintet, you have a pianist come and play with us. You really don't have that luxury of saying, we have 1 month to work this. Usually you have 3 days. If you're lucky, you get 1 week. And so you have to work very quickly. And so when a situation comes up like that, when you have 3 days to put in, put up a work of, let's say, a half an hour or 40 minutes piece, you really have to work very quickly. And you generally try to prepare beforehand. The four of us would prepare beforehand, make sure that we are tight as an ensemble. And then when we go to the pianist, we always have scenarios like, okay, maybe the pianist is going to play it this way, so then we rehearse it this way. Then maybe the pianist is going to do it that way, then this is our style. So when we go and meet the pianist for the first time, then the pianist will do certain things a certain way, then we're like, we look at each other, yeah, plan B, let's go plan B. And then we do plan B, that sort of thing. And we tweak it according to the pianist, but you sort of second guess certain scenarios and you see what can work. And generally that works very well. So four of us, we have to sound like one. And then when we work with another person, there's just two people essentially working together, rather than four of us plus 5 people, and then we start arguing and disagreeing and it becomes very difficult. So this essentially, what we do with other people is very different with what we do with ourselves. We have the luxury of rehearsing every day, and sometimes we overdo it. I think we spend 4 or 5 hours, we used to, right? And we discuss every minute detail, so we know each other so well. that you know, if one of my one of the town quartet members raises this eyebrow, you know, oh, he's going to do that, or the other one raises that, we're not going to. We know each other so well like that. But with a guest artist, a guest collaborator is very different, and and I think there is that joy as well in working very fast and working with someone who's very different from us, and putting things together. So Aaron and I were talking about having conflict and tension in creation, and that helps because you cannot always agree with people, and if there's some sort of a disagreement, maybe something new can come out of it, and that's very interesting for me as a string quartet member.
Has the attitude to chamber playing, ensemble playing changed, evolved over the last 30 years with the Tank Quartet?
I think so. I think when we formed, people were like, what's this all about, string quartet? And then when we left, I heard that people started to pick up the idea of playing together. Now we've got another young group called Concordia. They're part of the Resound Collective. Yes. And they've been working quite well. And it's something that I look forward to. And, you know, when I do retire, I just hope that there will be not just town quartet, but there will be other groups around and people wanting to be fully professional ensembles. There's, of course, this very exciting Baroque group, Red Dot Baroque, by Alan Chu. And it's also, there are different, I'm part of it, and there are different combinations. Sometimes it's a big ensemble, as big as Baroque ensembles will allow you to be, but there also, we've done a string quartet with Alan. So it's very interesting. And I think we're getting more and more young musicians coming back from abroad, and also not even coming back from abroad, but leaving to go and study, feeling that they can make music a career. In my day, it was people look at you strange when you say, I want to be a professional cellist. They're like, what are you talking about?
Trailblazer.
Yeah. Well, less. I think parents are more open to the idea. I think, you know, Eliza, when you study piano, I don't think you should think, I want to be a professional concert pianist. You can if you want to, but opportunities open up to you when you study piano well and you do it well. You can use music as therapy, music therapist. You can, if you have a good year, you can become a record producer. You can become a composer. You can use music for social work. You can use music for education. There's so many things. People use it in nursing homes, in hospitals. There's so many things you can do with music now. We talk even about using music as a management tool to teach people how to manage an organization. You know, CEOs pay a lot of money just to go and get orchestral conductor tell them how to manage a group of 100 people. And I think don't think of music in a very one-track direction that, oh, I learned the piano, therefore I have to become a concert pianist. You don't need that.
Yeah. Well, and if I may chime in and add to that, as an educator, I tell all our students here at D-Flat Studios that even if all else fails, learning music is learning a language, and it is the pursuit of an aesthetic, right? So you understand music everywhere you go, be it classical music, jazz, even rock, even pop, right? Because it forms a certain understanding and an enjoyment of the art form. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Eliza, for joining us this morning, and thank you for putting in so much hard work preparing all the three pieces.
Yes, thanks, Eliza. Well done. I mean, you played three very different pieces, right? The Benjamin Britten, the Prokofiev, and then you had the Jingle Bell song, which I just hope that you get to perform it during Christmas, because I think you guys did that really well. And thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you, Eliza.
Thank you.
All right, and lastly, I'd like to invite one student we have from D-Flat Music Academy. D-Flat Music Academy is in KL. So we have our piano student, Eileen, who's joining us in this chat as well. Eileen, do you have a question for Leslie?
Yes, hello, my name is Eileen. So the question that I want to ask is, how should we pianists do better when playing with someone else?
Oh, that's a very difficult one because I'm not a pianist, so I don't know. But I think when I play with pianists, one of the big problems with playing with the pianist is because the pianist is such a huge instrument, right? You have so many more strings than let's say cellist or violin. We only have 4 strings, and for every one of my strings, you have 3. Right? Every one of the strings, every key has 3 strings there. You're like way more powerful, like 100 times more powerful. And I think sometimes the frustration with playing a pianist is the pianist is always too loud. So I think the pianist needs to be more aware of what's happening around you. Sometimes just to play softer. And it's not an easy thing to do because your instrument is so big, right? It's like, you are driving a Ferrari, and I'm saying, can you please slow down and don't make the engine noises as quietly as possible, like an electric car. It's not going to happen. So we need to find that compromise. And with the piano also, articulations are very different. So whenever you put your fingers on the keyboard, you will get because of the hammer, you get a tong. You definitely get a tong. No matter how softly you play, you get a tong. But for us, we can change our articulations. Our articulations can go, we spoke about consonants today. It can be a ba or a wa or a la. So it's very different from just a tong, right? I think if the pianist can sort of find different shades of tongs, tong, ding, or tong, that sort of thing, and that will help. And then for us as string musicians, we need to find different ways to match the piano articulation. We cannot keep insisting, no, I need to play so softly. But yeah, you can play so softly, and then the piano cannot play anything already. How is it going to happen? So then I think the compromise goes both ways. But I think my pet peeve with a lot of pianists is that sometimes pianists don't play soft enough, or they're trying, but the piano is a very huge instrument, so it's not easy.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us from KL.
Thank you.
All right. Any last words any last inspiring words for our students here in Singapore and music students in general?
I think I would encourage, because I'm a chamber musician, I encourage musicians to just students to do more of this. Even now these days, soloists, big name soloists are forming chamber groups. Back in the day, they never used to, really, very rarely. But now a lot of chamber groups are formed by soloists, because I think they realize that it's a very important thing, and it's a very enjoyable thing to work with other people. Yeah, to stand in front of the stage and play something with the orchestra and with the conductor behind you, or with a pianist, it's very different than having a chamber ensemble. I know this is a problem for pianists, but I think the pianist should start, like I say, even at the young age, to say, hey, why don't I play with, Joshua, who is playing Vivaldi, Haydn violin sonata? Why don't I just play something with Joshua, And I know it's not such a difficult part, but the collaboration at 13 years old with your 13-year-old friend, why not? You start there, you learn so much more. Your playing improves, your hearing improves, your thought processes improve, and that's the most important thing. You expand your mind, everything just, the world opens up to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you for this morning, for inspiring the students of D-Flat Studios and sharing your thoughts on chamber music and ensemble playing. I wish you all the very best. For those watching, please support Project Artitude wherever you can. And certainly we'll be watching out for performances by Tang Quartet when the situation and circumstances.
Actually, we do have a live stream on 17th of December.
Wonderful.
So go to our website, tangquartet.com, or go to our Facebook page, and we will have more details there. But we have a live stream going out on the 17th of December. It's live. It's not recorded. We are going on, and we are playing a live concert. So we're playing Beethoven Opus 135, but we're going movement by movement. We're talking about each movement, and then we're playing the very famous Shostakovich 8th, is it 9th? 8th string quartet, the famous one. So these two pieces, a bit dark, the subject matter, but it's also we are playing in conjunction with, collaborating with a charity, and the title of the concert is called Champions of Hope. And we're working with Touch Community Services. So it'd be very interesting. Please join us. I think we will have because it's a live stream, you can ask questions, and we will spend a bit of time, I think, midway to answer your questions. And we will have a moderator who we work closely with, who will sort of answer those questions as well for you. So join us, please. It's free.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie, for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Just before we end the events of today, I just like to share a quote with everybody. Music does bring people together. It allows us to experience the same emotions. People everywhere are the same in heart and spirit. And no matter what language we speak, what color we are, the form of our politics, or the expression of our love and our faith, music proves we are the same. And that was from John Denver. So thank you all for joining us this morning, and have a great weekend and happy holidays.
Thank you very much, guys. It was a real pleasure. See you.
Thank you. See you later.